All right. Screen and awesome. All right, everyone see my presentation? Can I get a thumbs up or a yes?
Yes, yes.
Okay, awesome, ladies. Thank you very much. Appreciate you all. So thank you again for being part of the Tuesdays 2 p.m. contract classes. Today's topic is going to be offer presentations, the best practice of presenting offers, right? You know, I always like to go and kind of study the trend of the market, right? Let's go 6 months and even a year ago, how the market was, right? It was a seller's market back then. And if you were a buyer's agent, you know, how difficult was it to get your offer considered or even accepted, right? You had to go through hurdles, right? Because there were so many offers, so many people interested in one property. It was because it was a seller's market, very low inventory of homes on the market. So that gave the sellers the upper advantage, right? The upper advantage for them to really cherry pick the offers as they're coming in. And the awesome part is being a listing agent during that time. That's what's so amazing, is that if you were a listing agent 6 to a year ago, it was gravy, right?
That's true.
Because you were getting all these offers coming in left and right. And more so, you know, the buyers were reducing escrow periods, reducing or eliminating contingencies, right? Going above and beyond on the price itself too, right? You listed for 850,000, you were getting a 900,000 right off the bat. Well, times have changed since that time. That's a different period than what we're seeing right now. Now, bear in mind, a year ago, interest rates were at 3.75, 3.5%. Now the interest rates are 2.5, right? 7.25, 7.5. Now it changes the trajectory of what that looks like now, right? Where it was a seller's market now has pivoted into a buyer's market. What's the difference between a buyer's market and a listing or seller's market, right? Well, now the buyers have a little bit of say. They have a little bit of control because very few buyers are now qualified, right? The higher the interest rate, the less purchase power. The lower the interest rate, right? The more purchase power the consumer has. So now we need a transition. Now, people are still buying and selling. That's a given. That's not going to stop. Now we just got to work a little harder in our position and on our base of what we're doing on the daily activities, right? So today's topic is going to dive into the do's and don'ts and being proactive in how you engage these opportunities, and more so common practice, right? What to do, what to say, and how to maneuver those conversations when you're dealing with a listing agent, and asking the right questions, right? To ask, you know, how many offers are on the table? You know, when is the seller going to be reviewing or making a decision of what offer, if they're going to either accept, counter, or reject, right? And being very purposeful in your position, because your job as a buyer's agent, right, is to get your offer considered, okay? Meaning you want to get one foot in. Obviously, we all want all feet inside, right, with the offer accepted, but you got to know how to maneuver those conversations, especially if you're dealing with a professional, experienced agent that has been doing this for a long time or has multiple listings, right? They understand the common ground, the common practice. And if you do not, you know, align yourself in a way to really get into the core of the seller and the listing agent, most likely your deal may not go through. Okay. I just want to be very open and very transparent in my approach, because I've seen, you know, these situations happen quite often. And then the agent gets frustrated. Man, I didn't get my offer accepted, you know. Well, are you articulating your position, right? Are you really have the confidence to, you know, understand your offer? Is it clear, concise, and is it all filled out? or there's a lot of gaps and a lot of issues with it, right? Because it's not just the presenting of the offer, folks. It's also the documentation that backs your offer, right? Because anyone can submit an offer and says, look, I'm going to throw a $1 million offer, but then you got to prove why they're the right candidate for this property. Meaning, have they provided the financials, right? Do they have the leg to stand on with the down payment, closing costs, and then some, right? In case there's a gap or discrepancy on the appraisal. Okay, right now we're seeing a very interesting market, right? And sometimes the listing agents are still asking to release appraisal contingency. What if there's a big gap on that $50,000, $75,000 gap? How do you maneuver? How do you navigate those approaches, right? Well, you want to hold on to your contingencies to protect your buyer. But what if you do release your appraisal contingency and the appraisal is a lot less? Well, foolish and shame on you, because you need to have a foundation and a base and an understanding. At the end of the day, it's not what you say. It's not what the listing agent says. It's what both principles dictate, what the buyer is willing to do and what the seller is willing to do as well. So you just got to remember that. In my 25 plus years doing this, I've learned that it's not me. It's not the other agents. It's not the affiliates, right? Your home inspections, your escrows. It's what the buyer and the seller are willing to do. And if the buyer is not willing to press, then, that's on them. And there's repercussions if they don't move forward, right? They lose the opportunity because they're not performing. The seller may cancel, go in a different direction. Or there might be damages, right? If the buyer went forward with it and now is exposing their deposit and now they want to back out. Remember, the buyer can back out at any given time. The seller can get back out, but there's consequences when they do so. Okay, that's what we call breach of the contract. Who's breaching the contract? Is it the seller in breach or is it the buyer in breach? The question is, you don't want to be in that parameter, in that position. And if you are, how do you navigate those conversations, right? How do you maneuver your way to back out if the buyer or the seller wants to back out of a deal? Now, the topic today is going to go under the rules regarding, presenting offers, right? And it talks about the code of ethics, which is, again, one of the important components to what we do, right? We always do the right thing. We never take shortcuts. And, by all means, we guide our clients to their best interest, not our best interest. Okay. And what is not our best interest? The commission. Okay. Don't think solely on the commission. Gosh, I'm going to make a $30,000 commission on this. So it's all about me. I need to close the deal. No, it doesn't work that way. Okay. The way you need to be thinking and the right mindset is what's best for my clients. How do I diffuse the situation? Now, with all this, part of the negotiations that we do is knowing the win-win in all. Okay, I want to repeat this. Knowing the win-win in all. That's a very important formula because it's not, strong arming the component, not the component, but the opposing agent, right? I'm going to outsmart, outbeat. Now, you're both in it for the long haul to help navigate both parties. Okay. And if the deal doesn't go through, so be it. Okay. It's best to know your position than to get yourself in a dilemma or a liability. And now they're dragging you into litigation. Okay, those are never fun. And the last thing we want is to spend time, effort, and energy when we should be out there lead generating or looking for other opportunities for your clients. Okay. Again, I just wanted to set the tone and the basis for this and just an understanding, the importance and how you present yourself moving forward. Okay. You all with me on this? Hope it all makes sense. Okay. And again, I'm not here to scare you. That's not the whole intent of today's presentation, but to give you some knowledge and understanding, okay? The do's and don'ts, being proactive, being engaged, and following the timelines of events. That's going to get you out of some very interesting loopholes when you know. Now, with all that I said, also remember you have the support. You have your team leader. You have your broker. You have your legal. You have your resources, right? If you don't know, because that's not your specialty, do not try to interpret that, okay? Have someone else do it for. If it's an escrow question, very good question. That's a conversation we need to ask the escrow company. If it's a title question, that's a very good question. Let's get the title company in here involved in that question to answer your question. If it's a home inspection issue with the reports, well, that's a very good question, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer. Let's speak with the home inspection company, right? All that will help navigate your position and give you peace of mind, but more so you'll be able to sleep well at night, right? And then wake up again the following day and just go through the trenches, all right? I want you to close many deals. I want you to, get all these beautiful fat commissions, right? But it's knowing how to survive the game of real estate, but also how to navigate your position, landing that plane as smooth as possible, right? Sometimes it's very difficult with these real estate transactions. Now, I'm glad that all of you are on the call because this will give you a perspective and an understanding. We're also going to go through the purchase agreement, if time allows, which is about 45 minutes from right now that I have to really put everything into the presentation. So without further ado, let's continue. So first and foremost, let's talk about, the code of ethics, right? Article 1, the code of ethics and the standard of practice of the National Association of Realtors, which was in effect of January 1st of 2018. And it says that realtors pledge themselves to protect and promote the interests of their clients, okay? As I said earlier, okay? The most important position is protecting your client's best interest. Okay. Not doing anything crooked, not doing anything that's going to cause an issue, but doing the right thing and doing the right thing consistently. Okay. While part of the code of ethics and the article of the standard practice says that you pledge to protect and promote, your client's best interests. Now, is that only the buyer? No. It's anyone involved, buyer, seller, investor, developer, and that's also, affiliates, your lenders, your titles, your escrows, right? You hold yourself to a higher standard, but the base of this is your client, okay? Protecting their best interest. Realtors shall submit offers and counter offers objectively as quickly as possible, right? Now, part of the understanding, and this is why I went back a year ago, it was a very interesting market 2 years ago, right? 2020, 2021. If you were getting listings, congratulations. You were getting a lot of offers above and beyond the listing price, right? Buyers were releasing, if not all contingencies. Physical inspections, seller disclosures, HOAs, appraisal, loan contingency. They were going in there as slam dunk, 100%, they're golden. Those are awesome times, right? Those were beautiful times because there is at least some reinsurance that the buyer was 100% committed to finish the deal and not, delay the process or have any issues. They were approved. They had their position of proof of funds. They provided our credit with their FICO scores, right? And now you were there presenting the offers to the seller, and now the sellers were asking you as the professional, well, Simon, what would you do in my position? You just provided me with 10, 15 offers, right? Now it's only one or two possibly. Properties are taking a little longer to sell, right? You're probably seeing it out in the valley, the west side, here in the South Bay, or even in the Long Beach area. We're definitely seeing a slow pace. Now, it also depends on the area, right? Because your bread and butter properties, and what I mean by that, it's your 4 to maybe 700,000 or 800,000 price points. There's a lot of turnover. Okay, we're still seeing a lot of properties still selling that price. Anything above that, you know, in the millions, and now we're looking at jumbo loans in, you know, 1.5, 2 million, 3 million. Those are taking a little longer. Now, you as a professional need to understand how that looks like if you have a client that is qualified for a $2 million offer, right? Because obviously the higher the price, the bigger the commission, right? Imagine if you do get a buyer with the $2 million price point, and you know you're looking at 2.5 to 3% commission, right? That's a pretty substantial commission going your way. Okay. Now, with that, we're seeing a lot of sellers still in fantasy land. Sellers, unfortunately, are not being realistic. And they're still thinking that their property is worth like it was a year ago. Okay. Now, if you're the seller and you're the listing agent, it's going to be a rude awakening, because property is going to sit for days, for months. You're going to have that, you know, conversation with the seller of a price reduction. They're not going to be happy about it. This is why it's very important that if you are working with the seller, that you are analyzing and you're checking the market on a regular basis. If not every single day, you should be checking. Properties are coming on the market and deals are closing. So you need to keep a good tab on the market, especially if you're farming an area or you have a listing, or if you're working with a buyer. You should be also analyzing too, because your position as a buyer submitting an offer, they're going to ask you, well, Simon, is this a good offer that we're making? Are we offering more than what the property is worth? What if those questions come your way? How do you handle those particular objections, right? Because they're asking you for the green light, right? They're asking you if it's okay to press forward on this. How do you handle that conversation? Okay. This is why you need to understand the data. Data will tell you, numbers do not lie. And when you compare apples to apples, now you can have a very good conversation. Well, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, and looking in the area, I did a 1 mile radius, half a mile radius of the subject property, and I was able to find all the active, under contract, pending, and sold in the last 60 to 90 days. And based on what I'm looking at, it looks like we're okay on this price. Okay. Now you have a base, and now you have a great conversation where the buyer is going to feel at ease, right? Because they're relying on you to pull the trigger or not. All right. And don't be that agent that doesn't take control of their clients. Because what if you get a buyer that is aggressive, right? And this buyer wants to lowball the seller. How do you handle that objection? Let's say I'm the buyer's agent, and the buyer says, look, Simon, I know the house is $1 million, but it's been sitting in the market for 30 days. I think I want to lower less than what the listing price is. You're going to ask, well, what are you thinking, Mr. Buyer? I'm thinking of offering 100,000 below asking. Okay. My question to all of you on this call is, and I want you to just think about it. What if someone is asking you your opinion if we're making an offer less than the listing price? How do you handle that objection? Okay. Is it a positive or is it a negative? Okay. Because you can go any direction on that conversation. You could. You can say, well, Mr. or Mrs. Buyer, I understand, it's been on the market for 30 days. I think we should be okay. Let's see and hoping it sticks. Or you can be that agent says, look, we don't want to insult the seller. Yes, it's been on the market for 30 days, but I think we need to, reconsider that because we don't want our offer to be rejected, right? And both are great positions. But how do you kind of understand your role of what you should be doing? Well, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, I completely respect that. Let me run some numbers. Let me see where we stand. Data does not lie. Because now you can present the buyer is, look, based on the area, properties are selling for that $1 million price point, but they're taking about 30 to 45 days. Okay. So I think you're okay at 1 million. If we go under 1 million, seller may not consider and may reject our offer. And then we're back to square one. And now it puts the seller in a bad taste because they're going to say, well, if they're submitting a low offer, what else are they going to do once we're in escrow? Believe me, listing agents and agents in general are constantly thinking. Remember, it's like a relationship. It's like dating. I'm committed with this agent for 30 to 45 days. It's a dating relationship until we close. And if that experience is good, or was that experience dating was horrible, right? And let's be real, let's be open, let's be honest about this. How many times have you been in a transaction with a very bad agent? And then how many times have you been with an agent that's rock solid, professional, on top of his or her game, and knows and has those conversations, and it's proactive, right? Pleasant and professional. And you both close the deal, right? We all want that, but I can't promise you that because every agent works different. Every agent's style is different, okay? A lot of agents have egos, right? And they think they know better than us, okay? This is where you need to double down on your understanding of the purchase agreement. Now, you don't have to be an attorney and kind of go, paragraph by paragraph, but you should have some knowledge of certain things, timelines, contingencies, the do's and don'ts. All of your answers are on the RPA. Everything is in there. So if you know how to converse that, you're here where the other agent is here. They're not going to be able to battle you because you understand it better at a higher level, okay? So when acting as a listing broker, realtor shall continue to submit to the seller, landlord, all offers and counteroffers until closing or execution of a lease unless the seller landlord has waived the obligation in writing. So basically standard of practice 1-7 talks that even if you're the listing agent, you may get more offers, even if you're in negotiations. It's when the seller says to you, Simon, I do not want to look at any more offers. Okay. I just want 5 offers and that's it. Any additional offers. And it doesn't matter if it's 4 to 500,000 above asking, 5 offers is all I want. That's it. Then we have to acknowledge that. Now, with that being said, okay, if the seller doesn't say anything, it's an open dialogue. Even if you're in escrow and an offer comes in, because there may be an offer coming in, you still got to present that offer to the seller. Imagine that, huh? Very interesting. You're in escrow, you're 15 days into escrow, and you get another offer, and this offer is, 100,000 more than what you're in escrow in. And you're thinking, my gosh, what if I have this offer? Now I'm going to present it to the seller. Okay. And I know a lot of us are thinking, is this going to kill the deal? Well, no, not necessarily. Okay. It's how you approach the conversation, folks. Okay. Meaning, yeah, you may get another offer that's a lot higher, more favorable to the seller, but doesn't mean that the seller can unilaterally just cancel because this offer looks better, right? Like what they say, it's greener on the other side, right? The grass is greener on the other side, and it's sometimes not always the case. Because remember, think about this for a quick minute. Just because you get favorable terms, right? Higher price point, doesn't mean the buyer is going to perform. There's still too many elements on that. Do we have the financials? Do we have their FICO score? Do we have their ratios? Do we have their proof of funds, right? And the buyer still has time to do their fiduciary due diligence on the property, right? Investigations of the property. And the buyer within that time frame can say, Simon, I changed my mind. After looking at the property, I just do not like the interior, or there's not a good flow to it, right? Even though they've seen the property and they knew when they submitted an offer, the buyer within his time frame can cancel, and there's nothing that the listing agent or the the seller can do. Okay. So what it states here is basically any offers that are coming in have to be presented to the seller until the seller in writing, and that's important, in writing says otherwise. Meaning, Simon, I am requesting that no more offers to be presented to me. No problem, Mr. Seller. Can you please send me an email confirmation? I just need to have it in writing. There you go. Now you can explain that to any agent that's asking to submit an offer. Hey, this is John with ABC Realty. I know you're in escrow, but if this deal falls out of escrow, we'd like to present an offer to you. We're going to send an offer. Now you can say, well, I appreciate it, but the seller has declined any additional offers. Okay. Well, what do you mean, Simon? Well, as I stated, seller is not entertaining any other offers. Thank you. If anything changes, I will definitely let you know. But for the time being, you submit me an offer, it's not going to be even viewed by the seller. I'm going to hold on to it, but the seller has given me written instructions to not present any offers. There you go. You fall under that standard of code of ethics, right? Because you're doing what's your client's best interest. Okay. I hope that all makes sense. All right, so model and the MLS rules. The California Multiple Listing Service rules, suggestions on rules and regulations for all MLS. So basically there's NAR, there's CAR, there's our local boards, and then there's the MLS rules and regulations, right? So you got to follow all, and sometimes can be a little tricky, right? Things that you put on the MLS, things that you put on an offer, right? Things that you see on the code of ethics. Well, you got to understand your role as a professional realtor is to know and understand at least some of the basic fundamentals of your rules and regulations. Just like Keller Williams has rules and policies and procedures, right? The do's and don'ts, okay? You got to follow those, because if you break those rules, then you can get yourself in a whole lot of mess. So rule 9.5 talks about what are your obligations, okay? And submissions of offers and counter offers. The listing broker shall submit to the seller all offers until close unless procuring by law, governmental rules, and express instructed by the seller. Otherwise, the cooperating broker acting for buyer shall submit to buyer all offers and counter offers until acceptance. Okay, so as I stated earlier, that's a rule under 9.5 that says that if the seller has not given you written instructions that they're not willing to consider or entertain other offers, you can send as many offers to the seller. And if the listing agent challenges you, then you say, well, I completely understand. My buyer has given me written instructions to submit an offer. Do you have that in writing, Mr. or Mrs. Seller, or listing agent, I should say? Well, no, I don't. Okay. Then you can say, well, based on the MLS rule of 9.5, I have the ability to submit an offer until otherwise. And you said you don't have anything in writing, so we're going to submit an offer. Okay. Now, agents will be agents, right? And they may get frustrated, they may get upset, they may tell you something, because I've seen both sides. And I've seen the chaos and sometimes the drama regarding that. Well, that is not correct. Do not send me an offer. Okay. You know, we can always escalate it to something bigger, right? But again, at the end of the day, we do not want to burn bridges, right? You probably heard that phrase. You know, I don't like burning bridges. What does that mean? Is no matter how tough and how sometimes difficult it is working with an agent, you know, you don't want to burn that bridge. Meaning because you just never know if you're going to ever work with that agent again in the future. Especially a well-known, well-respected listing agent, right? That does a lot of business. And now you're trying to tap into that area or that market, right? You're going to come across that agent again. And if that agent remembers you and has, you know, a pretty bad taste, they're going to remember and they're going to emphasize and really influence the sellers. You know, my past experience with Simon has been really difficult. He was very poor in his communication skills. He did not, you know, follow up with me. There was missing documentations, and he was all over the place. You know, I don't want that to happen to you, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. So I'm just giving you a suggestion. Yes, he is the highest price point out of all the offers, but just in my dealings with Simon was never very pleasant. And that can be a big influence that the seller may change their position and their trajectory and says, look, Simon, I don't want you to have any issues with this agent, then we're not going to consider. Okay. You can have a big influence on your clients because remember, they're in the trenches with you as well. Their goal is to sell the property. And if there's going to be hurdles and obstacles and delays, do you really want to work with someone that's not on top of their game, right? Not professional, not be able to communicate well, right? When it comes to the process, you know, or maybe it wasn't even the agent and maybe the lender, right? They picked a bad lender and that's the same lender because this lender is feeding Simon, you know, leads. But this buyer's lender is horrible, right? All that you're going to take into consideration when it comes to submissions and obviously acceptance and even consideration of the offers.
Simon, can I ask you a question?
Absolutely, please.
Sorry, going back to when you were talking about offers, additional offers being accepted or being presented during escrow. Is that only up until the point where a seller says they don't want to hear any more offers, or until the buyer and seller are actually in contract?
Very good question. So what it is that even if you're in contract, right, buyer and seller are in escrow. You're 5 days in escrow. All right, buyers doing their inspections, right? Buyers going through the motions of getting their loan approved. What the rules stipulate is that if an offer comes in, we have to present that offer to the seller, even though you're in escrow. Now, that only changes if the seller in writing says, do not present any other offers. And how many times listing agents have those written agreements? Far and few. So knowing that information as a buyer's agent, you know that even if it's an escrow and this is a property that your clients really want, right? And it's like, oh, shoot, this property is already in escrow. What it says is you as a buyer's agent can reach out to the listing agent and present an offer. Present an offer, even though they're in escrow. It's not unethical. As long as the seller agrees to it If the seller says no, we need to have something in writing. And the listing agent may say, well, the seller has in writing told me we're not going to accept any offers. Now, that's far and few. We don't really see that practice. But what if you are so persistent in your position as a buyer's agent, right? That, we're going to shoot and hope it sticks. What you're hoping is that the buyer there in escrow falls out of escrow. And because your maneuver to submit an offer, the seller, once they mutually cancel with the first buyer, now you're in position. And I've seen circumstances where the buyer has submitted an offer and while in escrow, and they still had 3 or 4 other offers that were in positions. Okay. Meaning that they got other offers, but because you were right there at the moment when all this was going left field, and then within 2 or 3 days, you're in constant communications with the listing agent, and your offer looks very enticing, then guess what? Congratulations. If the deal cancels, you may be going into escrow when something that was possibly not even in existence because you were not involved in that first escrow. So what the rules stipulate is that even though the seller and a buyer are actively in escrow, right? Another agent can still submit an offer to the listing agent, is what it's saying.
But I guess the fiduciary responsibility of the seller's agent is also to, at the same time, let them know what the repercussions are about, backing out of the to and fro of the contract that they've already signed.
Absolutely, yeah. Just because you get another offer doesn't mean that the seller could say, oh, I want to cancel this. This other offer is more enticing. No, it doesn't work that way, because the buyer may pursue damages because now the seller's in breach, because the seller is greedy, right? And they want to get a higher offer. Doesn't work that way. Okay. The only way the seller can back out of this deal is if the buyer does not perform. Meaning, buyer does not do what they said they're going to do, right? And ultimately, there's ways you can maneuver, and it's putting tight conditions. If you know that the buyer has 8 days to release physical inspections, right? And now on the 6th day of the escrow period, you can submit what's called a notice to perform 6 days prior to that 8th day. Let's say that in the agreement, they put, that the buyer will release physical inspections on the 8th day. 6 days into it, you can send a notice to perform, meaning it allows the buyer 2 days to release that as a condition. That's what we call tying up the agreement. And the buyer that's in escrow is going to say, what the heck? I still have 2 additional days before I release that as a condition. I get it. I understand. But the listing agent is being aggressive, sending that notice to perform, because on the 8th day, the buyer shall release that. And if the buyer does not release that, then the seller has the right to cancel on the 8th day. Instead of waiting the 8th, sending a notice to perform, now that gives the buyer an additional 2 days. So technically speaking, they have 10 days instead of 8 days. Does that make sense? Okay. And you got to be also careful, because if a contingency falls on the weekend or holiday, then it reverts to the next calendar day, meaning business day. So if a contingency on the 8th day falls on a Saturday or a Sunday or a holiday, then ultimately the buyer has an additional time to release that as a condition. Even though you send the notice to perform, If it falls on the weekend or a holiday, it still gives the buyer that extra cushion to release that as a condition. Now, if the seller wants to entertain another offer that's more appealing, more enticing, right? Well, the listing agent needs to be proactive in their approach and making sure that, we're gonna put the pressure on the buyer. And at any moment that the buyer does not perform, we're out, we're canceling because we want to go on another. And you can be in communications and dialogue with someone outside of that transaction, because what the rules and regulations stipulate says, yeah, as long as the seller in writing hasn't said otherwise, yeah, the seller can obtain other offers coming in. Interesting, right? Very interesting. All right, so the rules of 9.6 says right of cooperating broker and presentation of an offer. So the cooperating broker has the right to participate in the presentation of any offer to purchase and secure. Basically, the cooperating broker does not have the right to be present at any discussion or evaluation of that offer, but the seller and the listing broker. However, if the seller gives written instructions to the listing broker requesting that the cooperating broker not be present when an offer comes in, the cooperating broker secures its present. Cooperating broker shall convey the offer to the listing broker for presentation in such an event. The cooperating broker shall have the right to receive a copy of the seller's written instructions from the listing broker. Nothing in this section diminishes or restricts the listing broker's right to control the establishment of an appointment for an offer presentation. Otherwise, what it stipulates is, okay, as it says in the highlighted, that the cooperating broker, meaning the buyer's agent, right, the one that's cooperating, has the right to participate in the presentation of any offer to purchase. Okay, meaning that if I'm the buyer's agent, right, and I represent my client, I can request with the listing agent that I would be present when you're presenting that offer. How about that? How interesting is that, right? Now, guess what, folks? 25 years ago, that was a common practice. But 25 years ago, we didn't have the technology that we have now. So then it was the norm to present offers to the seller. And what we used to do is literally call the listing agent and say, my clients are interested in your property over at 123 ABC Street in the city of Torrance, as an example. My clients have requested that I present an offer to your sellers. Can I meet with you today at 4 or will 5 o'clock work best? And the listing agent would say, let me check with my clients and then I'll get back to you. 10 minutes later, the listing agent would call, Simon, I confirm you can present the offer today at 5 p.m. Wonderful. Just to confirm, the address is 123 ABC Street in the city of Torrance. Yep. All right. I'll see you at 5 o'clock. Then at 4:50, you're parked next or near the property. Now you're going for that interview because it's like an interview process. You align your offer, everything that you want to say, and you go up to the front of the door. You knock at the sellers. The seller opens the door. You introduce yourself. Hi, my name is Simon with Keller Williams. I have an appointment with you at 5 with your agent, John. Oh, yes, Simon, come on in. Thank you very much. Now you're determining where we're going to sit or stand or whatever. Typically, it's in the kitchen table. And now you're in front of the seller and also the listing agent. And you have your offer executed by your buyers. And now you're presenting your case. That's how it used to be. The seller would acknowledge We would give a copy of the purchase agreement to the listing agent. The listing agent would review it. And the listing agent would says, Simon, thank you. Give us a few minutes to go over this offer. We'll get back to you. And I would say to the listing agent, okay, not a problem. Thank you. I'll step out, make some calls. Just let me know when you'd like me to come back in. 15, 20 minutes of analyzing that offer, right? They would call me right back and said, Simon, we like the offer, but we're going to counter you. And the counter is, a higher price. Okay, I review it. And if I had my clients outside, then I would go outside and let the buyers know. If not, I would call the buyer and put them on standby. And I would say something like this, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, you're on standby. I'm here at the property. I need a window of at least 45 minutes of your time. If I need a, call you to ask you, because we may be in negotiations, please make sure you're available during this time. I would call. I have some good news, Mr. Buyer. They're considering our offers, but the only thing they're countering us back is the price. Are you okay at this price? No, I'm not okay at this price. I want to counter that. Okay. What do you want to counter? Well, let's meet somewhere in the middle. Okay. So the listing price is 700. They came back at 710, but you said at 705, we'll make this work. Absolutely. Not a problem. Okay. Let me go back and I'll with your permission, I'm going to give a verbal. And if they agree, then we'll create a buyer's counter with the 705 once they give us a verbal. Wonderful. Go back in. Thank you so much. We're almost there. Buyers love the property and they can see themselves living in this home. My buyer has countered your counter of 710 and my buyers have proposed an offer of 705. We can open escrow tomorrow and we can rock and roll and get this deal closed in 30 days or less. Okay, they would go through the motions again, back and forth. I think we're okay at 705. All right, congratulations. I'll let my buyers know, and then we'll go from there. We'll be sending paperwork. That's how it used to be. So now what the rules of this position basically means, that's not common practice anymore, okay? I wish it was, because that's where you really need to fine tune your skill sets. But unfortunately, those times are long gone. Now technology has taken us in a different direction, which is perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with technology. Okay, it's fine. But now it's, we have DocuSign, we have emails, we have websites, we have text messages, everything has been streamlined in how we do business. But what it says is that the traditional way of how we used to do is still valid to this day. And what it says, as long as, the buyer has requested us to present this offer, we can ask the listing agent if it's okay to present. And the listing agent is probably going to feel a little uncomfortable and says, nope. Okay. They may say, no, I don't want you to present to my clients. And that's fine. But what it says also is that we need to have something in writing that the seller has declined that request. And if there's nothing in writing, we can still present the offer, believe it or not. Now, it's not common practice and it's not always the best way, but what the rule says is you can. Okay. And I would love for that to happen. I'm waiting still, right? One of our agents reaching out to me and says, Simon, I got someone that presented an offer to us and it was the best, negotiations because, we were in the mercy of the moment. We were right there crunching and analyzing and negotiating. Okay. What it says is, the cooperating broker can present an offer to the seller. Any questions regarding that? Okay. Business and Professional Code 10-176 says that the commissioner may, upon his or her own motion, and shall, upon the verified complaint in writing of any person investigating the actions of any person engaged in business or acting in the capacity of a real estate license within the state, and he or she may temporarily suspend, permanently revoke a real estate license at any time where the licensed real estate licensee in performance or attempting to perform any of the acts within the scope of this chapter has been guilty of any of the following. Make any substantial misrepresentations. Make any false promise of character likely to influence, persuade, or induce. A continue in flagrant courses of misrepresentation or making any false promise to the real estate agent or salesperson. Any other conduct, whether of the same or different character than specified in this section, which constitutes fraud or dishonest dealing. Okay. That immediately will put a restriction or even a suspension of your real estate license. This is a business and professional code, and this code is straight from the real estate law book. Okay, you can look it up. Put in business and professional code 10176, and it's going to populate any type of misleading, false information, fraud, or dishonest dealings. Yeah, you're looking at some serious issues. The commissioner may suspend or revoke the license of a real estate license, delaying, renewing, or a real estate license, demonstrating negligence or incompetence. Okay, so that's another caveat to this. Okay, this is why it's very important that you understand your position as a professional, understanding your role. Okay, you're not an attorney, you're not an accountant, right? You're not giving legal advice or taxation advice, right? Your job is just to sell property. That's it. Okay. But you should also have some understanding of your role as a professional realtor. Okay. Because any demonstration of negligence or incompetence, it's a violation of that code. And if they find you guilty of that code, it's a serious matter where they may revoke your license. Okay. Again, not to scare you, not to put fear in you, but to put knowledge in you. Okay, the importance of understanding. If you don't know, don't go winging it. Okay, just say, look, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, that's a great question. It's above my understanding, but I do have the resources, and my job is to get that information for you. Allow me a couple hours to speak with my broker, speak with my team leader, and help navigate this for you. Okay. There you go, problem solved. Remember, you don't have to be the go-to, know expert of everything, all right? Because that's an opportunity for exposure, right? Your job is just to sell. You're licensed to sell real estate. Nothing more, nothing less. The problem where I see a lot of agents, they go deep into this. They go 3 deep into this conversation, and now they're backpedaling and trying to get out of that rabbit hole. And now may be too late. So I caution you, understand what your role, and always do the right thing. Never take shortcuts, and never mislead anyone in doing anything, because that's an opportunity you just don't want to be there. And that comes to the next one of common law fiduciary duties, right? The law imposes on a real estate agent the same obligations of an undivided service and loyalty that imposes on a trustee in favor of a beneficiary. This relationship not only imposes upon him the duties of acting in the highest good faith towards its principal, the agent from obtaining any advantage over the principal in a transaction, okay, of his agency. So, and there's a case study regarding this from the Superior Court of California back in June 3rd of 1968. Okay, so what is fiduciary duties, right? Your fiduciary responsibility to your clients. Okay, that those are your clients, not the opposing agent, not the opposing principal. Okay, you're there for your client's best interest. Rules 9.1 appointing for showings and negotiating with the seller. After reasonable efforts and no less than 1 day after the cooperating broker cannot contact the listing broker or his representative. However, the listing broker at his option may procure such direct negotiation by the cooperative by giving notice to all participants through the MLS. In the event of showing, negotiating will be conducted solely by the seller, and the listing broker shall clearly set forth such facts in the listing information published by this service. So basically what this rule 9.1 stipulates is you're exempt under the certain guidelines and circumstances, right? So if you're not getting any engagement with any party, right, the buyer's agent or the seller's agent, right, either or, that you want to escalate this to the broker. Hey, Simon, I have a situation, I'm in escrow, I represent the buyer, we're in property 123 ABC Street. I'm having some challenges with the listing agent. We're about to fund this deal, but if I don't get a response from the listing agent, I might lose the expiration on the rate, and this deal may fall apart, and it's going to be a big mess because the buyer is already speaking with an attorney. Help, help, help. Not a problem. Okay. My goal and my job is to navigate that and say, okay, and I'm analyzing the scenario. I will personally reach out to the listing agent and see if I can get in communications. If I'm not successful in my approach in communicating with the listing agent, then I would do some research and find out who the broker or the team leader or manager of that office. And then I will reach out to them and introduce myself. Hello, my name is Simon. I'm the managing broker for Keller Williams. We are in a transaction. We represent the buyer in this situation. And your agent, Mr. John Smith, has not been in communications. We're at the verge of losing this opportunity. The buyer's just stressing out because their rate lot is about to expire, and that's going to bump up their rate to now, 8% as an example, right? And that may kill the deal. I'm just trying to navigate this as professionally as possible. I need your assistance and help before this becomes something worse. The buyer's already in communications with their legal team and seeing what the best approach. But before that happens, I thought maybe if broker to broker, maybe you can reach out to your agent and at least get the dialogue going. And for the most part, the majority of times we can get that pretty much wrapped up. Okay, so utilize the resources you have. Okay, now we also have sample letters on the zip forms. You just navigate from your forms or zip forms. You click here, and it'll take you to all forms, and I'll show you what I'm talking about momentarily. And then on those forms, there's specific forms that you can use, such as a demand that the offer be presented, lease expiration letters, notice of change of property managers. There's probably a handful of letters that you can use as part of your arsenal. And again, always reach out to your broker, ask for some guidance and some advice before going in this direction, because sometimes you don't need to go this deep into it. Just pick up the phone and reach out to the broker. Here's an example of that letter. Okay, letter of offer to present. And it goes into the importance of why this letter is, and that you're breaking certain rules. Okay, so let me really quickly go to zip forms. Obviously, you click on that. Maybe it's here. Nope. Okay. I just lost it. Okay. So then from there, you just go through your zip forms, right? As an example. So I just want to show you where you can populate these letters. Does everyone see my screen? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So here, then you go to, let's say, one of your files as an example. Okay. And then from here, let's you go to all forms. And then here, where it says California Association of Realtors, you click on here and then go where it says car sample letters. You click on that, and then that takes you to all these very cool letters that you can use. Demand to seller to perform, demand for the deposit of buyer for failing to perform, acting against the buyer's advice, acting against the broker's advice for buyers and sellers. Trying to find that one presenting the offer. I know I saw it here. Deposit, compensation. Here it is, demand, offer to be presented, right? So now you populate that form. And then the demand is right here. And here's the letter that you can utilize. If you are requesting to present this offer, then you got the offer right here. Okay. You fill it out. You have your yourself sign this, and then you send it over to the listing agent. And the cool thing, it gives illustrations on the reason for this demand. It gives you an idea what the purpose of this letter is, and fill it all out, date it, property address. I represent, which in this case is the buyer, right? Who has made a written offer to purchase the above described property on a purchase agreement dated back on so-and-so date, nor the buyer have received a response to the written offer. And here's a copy of that previous submitted offer. Okay. I initially submitted the buyer's offer, and it was personally delivered. It was emailed, it was faxed, or some other way, right? Maybe presented in person, right? And then if checked, proof of delivery, and then any communications that I've done. I tried to communicate with you on Monday. I try to communicate with you on Wednesday. I try to communicate with you on Friday with no success. I called this number, I emailed you, and here's a little bit of what I did. No success in getting a hold, went straight to a voice message. Okay. Now this is where it's the fun part. It's what we call the meats and potatoes. This is where all the violations, right, have occurred. Mr. Seller, you're in violation of standard practice 1.6 of the Code of Ethics, right? The agent, because the agent is not following, the rules and regulations, then it goes. I'm not going to go deep into it because we're already past our time, but that kind of gives you an example of what the forms look like. Okay. Any questions? I hope this makes sense to you. And again, if you have any additional questions that I could be of help or service, please don't hesitate. Reach out to me. Again, this is one of the fun stuffs that I like to do, is to really educate our client, our agents, and doing the right thing, right? But ultimately, as a professional, right, it's knowing how to navigate as a buyer's agent the approach. Communication. That's the cure to a lot of the issues. I promise you that. All the other stuff will align. All the other stuff will just fall into place, but it's lack of communication that ultimately puts people in a frustration and bad taste, and that's not going to be, any of you. Okay, so I appreciate you all. I hope this was of value. Again, if you have any questions, text me, call me, or email me. All right. Thanks again, and I will see you on the next contract class. Take care.
Thanks, Simon.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. See ya.